So welcome. Today I'm going to talk about using LinkedIn, the social network, to help jumpstart your career by really being able to do some professional networking. So most people probably know what LinkedIn is, but if you don't, it's a lot like Facebook, but for professionals. And really what it's supposed to do is help out businesses to find good employees, help employees to find good jobs, and of course help people with similar professional interests to find each other. So the first thing we need to know is, what is the point of LinkedIn? And the way that most people use LinkedIn is they let their profile sit and they do nothing with it for months or years at a time until they find themselves on the market for a new job, and then that's when they jump right on because they want to get a job. So what's the point of using LinkedIn? To get a job, right? Actually not the case. And really, what is the case? LinkedIn is about building your network. And so it's something that you always want to be doing, because even when you have a job, you still want to be building your network. It can help you learn as a professional. It can help you open up new opportunities, whether you're looking to move within your company, move to a different company, or even to just build your skill set in your current job. So how do we do this? And why is it important? Well, it's important because this is a little demographic information about LinkedIn. You might think LinkedIn is a social network, so it's all young people, it's all people trying to get ahead and no one who can really help you do that. But in reality, the average user is over 40 years old. They make more than $60,000 a year. And in fact, most of them are people with decision-making power in their business. So these are great people to be able to connect with. But the question is how? And there's a few ways that you can do this successfully. One, you want to make sure you optimize your profile and maintain it on a regular basis. You also want to be active. You want to use your existing connections, lean on your alma mater, the schools that you've gone to, and be a giver. Contribute to the community. So the first thing we're going to talk about is optimizing your profile. And that's kind of the first thing you want to do is add a nice tagline, because this is the first thing people are going to see, and this is really your representation online. It's kind of like your resume, except a lot of times nowadays people aren't even going to bother to look at your resume. They're going to look at this first to see if you're even worth downloading the PDF of your resume, or even looking at the paper copy that you may or may not have faxed in. So what you want to do is use a tagline that's going to make you stand out from the crowd. And a lot of people might say software engineer, MBA student. But if I'm trying to hire an MBA student, it's not going to be enough to know that you're an MBA student. That's not going to set you apart. What I want to know is, what are you interested in? Why, instead of all the other software engineers in the world, should I hire you? So you want to use strong language. This is mine here. I talk about having a passion for the convergence of business and technology. So right there, instead of just an MBA candidate, you know that I'm an MBA candidate who really is interested in business in the technology sector, and most likely I'm conversant in both languages. So if you're looking for somebody who can work with engineers and work with finance, this is going to kind of pique your interest. Again, you want it to be professional and applicable to your target job or industry. So for me here, I do have a tie on, but I'm not in a full suit, and I've got sort of a more casual look on my face. If I was in finance, I would want a full suit. I would want a nice background. If I was, say, in the music industry, I probably wouldn't want to be wearing a tie in this picture. You really want to match your profile to the image of the job or the industry that you're looking for. Then you're going to have a summary here. Again, this can be whatever you want it to be, but it needs to represent yourself, and you want it to be a compelling story of who you are, what you're looking for, and what you've accomplished. I suggest doing it in the first person. It's a little weird. Almost everybody knows that you've written your own profile, so it's a little bit strange to do it in the third person. But some industries that are a little bit more old-fashioned, the finance industry, that might be okay for. It's a little bit more formal. If you're in technology, you probably want to use the first person. But whatever you do, you want to make sure that there are no grammar mistakes in it, and you want to make sure that it really flows, because again, this is the next thing that people are going to read. And LinkedIn will actually tell you how your profile is doing. This shows up on the right side. So you want to really fill this up, and if you're not kind of all the way up to the superstar level there, it's going to give you ideas of ways that you can change that to do it. And it'll say things like, you know, reach out to some of your connections, write a recommendation for someone. All of these things will help you out. So the next thing you can do is be active on the network. You can post, like, and share content, interesting articles. You can follow interesting people and companies, and this actually kind of ties together, because more often than not, if you're following really interesting people and companies, then you can just repost or share articles that they've posted, and then people who are following them as well start to see you as an industry thought leader as well, and they'll see, you know, oh, Mark Zuckerberg posted this article, and so did Kylie Nero. Kylie Nero must really know what's up with social media. And it seems a little silly, but actually it's true, and the more you do this, the more you really are going to get that reputation as someone who knows what he's talking about. And comment on things, make your presence known. So here, this is a little bit dated now, but some of you might remember that Facebook tried to buy Snapchat for a couple $2 billion not too long ago, and Snapchat turned it down despite the fact that they really have no revenue model. So I thought that was a little silly, so did basically everybody in the world. We'll see if it turns out to have been the right decision or not. But anyway, I posted that article, and then you can see a couple friends of mine have commented on it, have liked it, just really engaged in a discussion. It makes it seem like you're plugged into the industry. You want to leverage your existing contacts. This is what LinkedIn is really good for. So if I'm looking to get into a company, the first thing I might want to do is see, do I know anybody at that company? Hopefully the answer is yes, but it might not be. And if that's the case, the question is, well, do I know somebody who knows someone at that company who can connect me? And that's where LinkedIn is really good. So this is the CEO of TripAdvisor. And if I want a job at TripAdvisor, I might want to know him, right? He could help, I bet. If I wanted a job, I think he's got that decision-making power. Problem is, I don't know Steve. I've never met him before, and I think he would ignore my emails if I sent them to him. But it turns out, I know Amanda Musto, and she knows Steve. Now, in this particular example, he happens to be her boss, and she may not feel comfortable connecting me, but you never know until you ask. And these connections exist all over the place, and LinkedIn really highlights them for you right on the page, so you can see, okay, listen, Amanda, I'm really interested in TripAdvisor. I see that you know Steve. I was wondering if you might make me an introduction. I'd really love to learn more about any opportunities. And 9 times out of 10, people are really happy to do that for you, especially if they're, a true connection, a true friend, and somebody that you've kind of maintained a relationship with. Now, the next thing you can do is really lean on your alma mater. So I've got here Merrimack High School, Boston College, and Columbia University. These are the 3 schools that I've been to, which means I can tap into these 3 networks, and it really has never been easier to do this now that we have LinkedIn. So how do you do that? Well, there's an advanced people search where you can actually say, I want to look for people at this college in this industry. And there's also a tool called the Alumni Finder, and that's actually what I'm going to show right now. It's a really neat tool. And you get to it by clicking Connections and then Find Alumni. And that loads up this page right here. So what are we seeing here? Well, the first thing we're seeing is the school selected at the top. Now, it's automatically selecting Boston College because that's where I am right now. But over here, I can do Change School. So instead of using all my information, maybe we can use somebody else's information here. So who went to a college? Any college. Kylie, go ahead.
Nashua Community College.
Nashua Community College, all right. So I'm going to change the school. Let's see. And we'll see Nashua Community College is showing up here. So now I get Nashua Community College. And I can say, okay. Now I can see what companies people from Nashua Community College work at and what they do there. So maybe Kylie is really interested in a sales job. He can actually click on sales, and we're going to get a set of people who have gone to Nashua Community College and work in sales. And then what Kylie can do is he can look through these lists of companies and see if any of them are interesting to him. Maybe he really wants to do sales for Comcast. He can actually click on Comcast, scroll to the bottom here, and see in fact that there are 2 alumni from Nashua Community College from 2008 and 2011 who do sales at Comcast. So these would be great guys for Kylie to reach out to and say, hey, listen, I know that you're working at Comcast. I saw that you went to Nashua Community College. I went there as well. I really liked this class I took with that professor. I don't know if you know him. Reach out and do something, a personal connection, and then say, I'd really be interested in learning more. I was wondering if we could connect. I'd love to buy you a cup of coffee and we could chat. And that's what this tool is really, really good for, is finding that sort of thing and just figuring out who can open a door for me. And people love the colleges they went to generally and are almost always willing to help somebody out. So that's, again, a really interesting tool. Not the only one, but I think one that's really worth exploring, and also one that I think is a little bit underused, and it's not necessarily highlighted in the way that I think would be best. So a little hard to find, but when you do, it's really well worth it. Then, of course, you want to be a giver. You want to really offer yourself out there instead of just always kind of coming to LinkedIn when you have a need. You want to make sure that you're constantly kind of using this and helping other people out, because that's what's going to make them want to help you out as well. So one way to do this is writing recommendations. LinkedIn has a tool where you can write a short 1-2 paragraph recommendation about people that you've worked with, and it'll show up on their profile. There's the opportunity to ask for this, but if you really want to be kind of a giver and you really want to use LinkedIn to the full effect, if you have an hour, I would say just think about a couple of your coworkers or people that have done a really good job and take that time to write a brief recommendation for them. And you'll find that as you do that, other people will start doing the same thing for you, and then it really makes you a much more interesting and important candidate. And if you share connections with somebody and they say, okay, well, I know that Kylie knows Brandon, and that's all I know about them, then okay, well, Kylie knows Brandon, but who cares? But if I see that Brandon, whose opinion I really respect, has written some really nice things about Kylie, then I'm much more interested in getting to know and helping him out, and maybe even working with them at some point. So write recommendations. It's a great way to be a giver. And you can see here, this is what one of them looks like. You want to endorse people for skills. This is one of the easiest things you can do. In fact, oftentimes you actually do it on accident, because LinkedIn feeds up this little thing here, and all you have to do is say, yep, she has those skills. But it takes about 2 seconds to click it, and then it really helps people's profiles stand out, and it helps them come up in recruiter searches and things like that. So again, it also is going to show up in the news feed, and it's going to say Kylie endorsed Steve for this skill. And that, of course, gets your name out there. It makes you known that you're a person who can be counted on and who gives and who really builds the community. And that's going to make you the kind of teammate that people are going to want. You can make introductions for people. So again, we talked about me trying to get to know the CEO of TripAdvisor. Amanda could make that introduction for me. If she does that, I'm going to be much more likely to help her out somewhere down the line. So that's really a nice thing to do, to be a part of the community. And most importantly, don't wait until you need something, because everybody can smell that, and it becomes obvious even if you're trying to hide it. If you're the person who only ever asks for things when you need it and never helps out any other time, just like in real life, that's not going to reflect well on you. So this goes back to that idea of writing recommendations even when they haven't been asked for. Making an introduction. If you know somebody's looking for a job in a particular segment, you take a quick look and see, okay, well, I know this guy from undergrad, and he's doing exactly what my friend wants to do. I'll introduce them. They can take it from there. All these things are really helpful in building a strong network. It is important, however, when you connect to do it in the right way. Again, a lot of this is not rocket science. It's things like writing a personal message. LinkedIn is going to auto-populate a "I'd like to connect" message, and everyone's seen it a million times. When you get that, it's almost like an insult, because you couldn't take 2 seconds to write a personal message to me. It literally takes 10 seconds. So write a personal message. Say, hey, listen, we connected at this event or this networking thing, or I see that you're working in the healthcare industry. I think that's an amazing place to be right now. I'd love to learn more. I think we should connect. Something like that, totally fine to do. Anything really that personalizes it, even if it's just one sentence, is going to make it that much more useful to the person, and they're going to be that much more likely to accept. Reference when you met or your common factor, especially for people like recruiters or anyone who's a mid-level manager or higher. They're constantly getting hit up, and there's nothing worse than trying to figure out where you met somebody and having no kind of basis and no leads and evidence to figure out what it really is. So again, very simple, just reference, hey, we met last week at this event. We talked about our shared love of chocolate. Whatever it is, you want to say that just so that the person says, oh yeah, that's right, I remember that conversation, I remember this person. Hopefully they remember you, positively. If not, maybe they're not the right person to be connecting with, but either way, reference that common factor and people are going to be much more likely to give you the time of day. Explain why you want to connect. I know I've kind of been going over this, but it is important. I once received a connection request from a guy in Australia who I think worked in film. Pretty interesting. Had no idea who he was, no idea why he wanted to connect. We didn't share a geography, we didn't share an industry, we didn't share a skill set. So I said no. So you really want to make sure you explain why you connect, because maybe he had a good reason. Maybe actually we had somebody in common, maybe he was really interested in shifting industries and felt I'd be someone who could ask. But if you don't explain that, nobody's going to be able to read your mind, and they'll just hit the no thanks button. And of course, be gracious. That's really important in anything you do, but particularly when you're doing something like professional networking. People understand that their time is valuable and they're happy to help, but they want to make sure that you understand that their help and their time is valuable as well. It's very easy to send a thank you note, which is something you always want to do. It's either a message or whatever when somebody makes an introduction for you or writes you a recommendation or even just connects. Just be very gracious, thank them for their time, thank them for connecting, and you can never say thank you too many times. People do appreciate it, and it really goes a long way. And then the last thing, your LinkedIn allows you to connect, and then it also has a messaging service, but I would suggest once you connect with a person, you'll have access to their contact information, including their email. I would absolutely suggest using their email from then on instead of LinkedIn's messaging services, particularly with the way that Gmail and other email providers are filtering social and spam and promotions into different buckets. Using someone's personal email is going to make sure that they get it in a timely manner. So the last thing I would say is that these are a few good recommendations for growing that professional network and getting to a place where you can really open some doors for yourself. But LinkedIn is a business as well, not just a service for all of us. And as a business, they're constantly trying to grow and provide valuable resources. And one of the things they do is they have university.linkedin.com, and it has loads of resources that are designed for students who are seeking jobs. But I really think they're useful for anyone who wants to learn how to use the tool better and wants to grow their professional network. So I strongly recommend you to visit that. They're constantly updating it, and they've got much more in-depth information on things like building great profiles or how to use LinkedIn to find a job or an internship. So any questions? Kylie?
Seems like you spend some time on LinkedIn. If you could think of maybe like one thing that you see people get wrong in LinkedIn profiles all the time. Does anything jump to mind quickly that you might be able to speak to?
Yeah, I think people try to, it's a professional network, and so I think people try to be very professional. And what that winds up meaning is that they tend to make these very cookie cutter profiles that don't stand out at all. So I think it's important to know that, of course, you want to put your best foot forward and you want to appear professional, but it's very important to make sure that you are standing out and differentiating yourself, because one of the things we've been talking about here is how easy it is to do sort of this networking that in the past has been very difficult. Things like finding out alumni who work at companies. In the past, you would have had to go to an alumni event and shake a lot of hands and ask around and maybe find out that somebody works in sales at Comcast. It's really broken down a lot of those barriers, but what that means is that many more people are doing it, and it's much more difficult to differentiate. At the end of the day, you're trying to put your best foot forward, but it's still your foot. So you want to make sure you're differentiating yourself and don't let professionalism get in the way of actually representing who you are. So I think that's a big mistake I see people make. The other mistake I see people make a lot is not using the right language for their industry. All of this stuff is searchable on the web, and therefore it's going to be used in searches by recruiters. And if they're not seeing the right language showing up on the profile, they're not even going to look at it. So if you're trying to get into sales and you're not talking about hitting numbers or metrics, you're not talking about lead conversion, then your profile is just entirely going to get passed over. So figure out the industry you want to be in, and figure out what the buzzwords and the most important skills and things in that industry are, and make sure that those are showing up on your profile, because it's just like a Google search. The more of those words you have, the more likely you are to show up on people's radar. Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you so much. Of course, this will be available online. In fact, you might very well be watching it online. And if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email, I believe, is on the Foundation's website, and you can use the contact form as well. So thanks for watching and listening and joining me.